Welcome to the Internet Chess Club. Checkmate.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Alapin variation. This is video number 4. We have looked so far at some classical games in this opening, or major games, and looked basically at two major lines. The first one was queen takes d4, or major lines diverting from D major line. Queen takes d4 was one, and the other one was delaying d4 by playing knight f3, knight c6, and bishop c4, knight b6, bishop b3. Well, we have to start looking at some of the main stuff, which is going to be d4, c takes d4, knight f3, knight c6. We will have a quick look towards the end of this series at some other interesting alternatives, such as e6 immediately. But no questions about knight c6 being the main move. And here white has two major choices. Take on d4 is one, and bishop to c4 is another. We will focus on c takes d4 in this and the next video, and then switch to bishop c4. d6. Well, white has basically one really major move here, which is bishop c4. And after knight b6, bishop b5 used to be the main move, but quite recent theory, when I say recent, let's put it in the last 10 years or so, proved that black is absolutely okay here quite easily, at least after take on e5, and many other possibilities as well. And bishop b3 is the major and most aggressive way to play. Today we will focus a little bit on knight c3. It's an interesting move played a lot by Grandmaster Sveshnikov, but black should be very comfortably okay in this line. And we will look at bishop b5, knight b6, bishop c4, knight b6, bishop b5, and other lines other than d takes e5. This variation leads almost to very equal position, sometimes very drawish position, quite by force. So we can actually see some of the best players with the black pieces don't really want to get an absolutely drawish position, trying to play moves like bishop d7 and others. Let's start first with knight c3. The big idea here for white is that if black captures on c3 and then captures on e5, d5 is just very powerful and actually leads to, well, advantage for white. We will look at that in a second. g6 is one possibility. This is actually a very recent game, and amazingly enough, Sveshnikov has played this line for at least 30 years, probably somewhat more than that. This is a game in 2009, very recent one, is with the white pieces, bishop f4, takes on e5, very interesting bishop takes e5, a very cool idea trying to check on b5, but no pressure, just bishop g7, bishop b5, and black pair of bishops. The king is going to be very safe on g7 immediately. Black is absolutely okay. Sveshnikov against Sharnikov, Tallinn, 2009. So this is g6, maybe another possibility. All those bishop g4 types of bishop g4 just seems to favor white. For example, after h3, take on f3, take on f3, and here if take on e5, just b5 and rook b1, nothing even to discuss whether white has enough compensation for a pawn. That's horrible for black. And even something such as e6 Again, rook to b1, and white is just somewhat better here thanks to his pair of bishops. This is Kilik against Nicety 2002. And let's look tiny bit at capture and d5. e4. Otherwise, white simply takes on e5. Knight g5, knight b8, and knight takes e4. Horner against Romili, 1981, and okay, no questions. So what should black play? Well, black has quite a simple way to play against this system, not allowing white pawns to advance. So first take on e5, and here we don't need to dig too much into analyzing this position. We will look at it quite quickly. Knight takes c3 is the main move and quite a simple way of playing. Even moves such as knight to b4, a3, queen takes queen, king takes queen, knight a6, bishop b5, bishop g4, knight to c7. I mean, this is quite complicated, but looks like black is okay. This was Sveshnikov against Hellers, 1991. I mean, in every decade you will find many games of Sveshnikov, starting from the 70s, I believe. So, also this is possible. Bishop e6 is another interesting way to play for black. White has many moves here. Knight b5, bishop b5, queen to a4. I will just show one game played between Sveshnikov and Tal in Minsk 1979. Sveshnikov played knight to d4, Tal took on d4, simply take on c3 might actually been better. And I actually prefer black. a6, e6, white has weaknesses and not much to show for it. But Tal took immediately on d4, queen takes, knight takes c3, queen takes, a6, preventing check, bishop e2 and rook c8. Sveshnikov Tal, Minsk, Russia Championship or USSR Championship 1979. Probably a major move for white might be queen a4, but again, black has many ways to be okay here. We don't and cannot deal with each one of those lines. But knight takes c3 might be actually a very simple way also. Queen takes queen, king takes queen. Another possibility is knight takes queen. Actually one that I thought might be preferred, but also king takes queen seems very okay. And after pawn takes c3, bishop d7, there were some games of Van Veli, other strong players here. Let's see, Sveshnikov definitely rules the list of players here. For example, knight d4, rook to c8, bishop e3, a6, king d2, e6, and after f4, bishop c5, black is just very okay. Sveshnikov against Lanka, Bratislava 1996. If not knight d4, bishop e3 might seem like the main move. e6 is one of the main possibilities, but also possible is, for example, knight c6. This was Sveshnikov against Filipov, Dubai 2001. Black is absolutely okay. g6 immediately. Kharlov against Fedorov. Black won this game in 2002. But okay, I chose e6. It just looks like the most solid way to play. And here, after rook b1, rook c8, black play is very simple. White is going to be left with a weak pawn on e5. Black is willing to give the a7 pawn for it. Black has absolutely no weaknesses. Just a very nice position to play for black. and very easily. Bishop b5, take, and rook c2. And actually black is already slightly better, very active rook and weak e5 pawn. Sveshnikov against Alexeyev, Dubai 2003, and Alexeyev won with the black pieces. And another possibility is knight d4 instead of rook b1. But also here black played exactly same simple way. Rook c8, bishop c5, and knight to c6. Sveshnikov against Korniev, all those players are 20 very strong players. This game is from Sochi 2006. So let's have a quick look at king take, but basically black can just pick up whichever line he wants to play here. Bishop g4 is one possibility here, but h6 not allowing anything on g5 is just a simple way. If bishop c4, e6, bishop e3, bishop d7, king e2, bishop a3, and just black is going to complete his development soon. Knight a5, b6, king c7. This was Horner against Miles in 1975. Miles won with the black pieces, and also Castle was just the same. Bishop c5, followed by bishop d7 and knight to a5. This was Kunte against Reshkovsky, 1999. Black also won this game. And let's just show bishop e3 immediately. e6. Bishop g4 was also played in another game of Sveshnikov, this time against Ruban in 1995. Black was also okay, but this led actually to somewhat complicated position. This wasn't as simple. White sacrificed a pawn here, but got quite very powerful initiative. That's why I believe that just the simple development is the easiest way. e6, bishop d7, bishop e7, just absolutely no brain. And black is very okay. Mueller against Jansa in 1975. Black won. So to summarize knight c3, it is tiny bit tricky. If black take, maybe white will try to play for this push. But if black first captures on e5 and then even bishop e6 or capture on c3, it just seems like black is very easily okay. So bishop c4 is the other line that is basically can be played. Knight b6, bishop to b5. And here we should deal with other alternatives to d takes e5. D takes e5 is going to be the main topic of our next video. For example, players like Topalov, Morozevich, very the strongest players out there that don't want to reach close to drawish positions. They will either play d5 or even more bishop d7. So we will mainly focus on those. There's another move that I personally don't think is okay enough, but is being played by some very strong players that are doing quite okay with it. So it's interesting. I mean, let's see. The problem with this move is that black wasted a move, played a6, and anyway white wanted to capture on c6, or at least was thinking about it. How to play best in this position? I would think that maybe just a simple castle might work. For example, if bishop develop here, that was one game, but I think this is a wrong play. And now bishop g5, and after f6, rook e1, it looks not so great for black. This is Alikhanov against Myrov from 2002. White tried to take immediately on d6, but this is actually not correct. After take immediately on d6, now it's easy for black to develop, and the bishop went to d7. Black gained full control of the center. His pawns are controlling all the dark squares, and his pieces are controlling all the light squares. Black has full control over the center. White is really missing a light-colored bishop here. Bishop e7 and bishop e6. Black is just better here. Guadana against Sadler in Linares 1995. And also another game played. Tiemann was playing black pieces. His opponent played knight c3. He played bishop g4, and after h3, bishop h5. Very funny play. e6, g4, knight g5, and black is just fully defended again, controlling all the key squares in the center, and black went on and won this one, Enkeler against Tiemann in 1978. Queen c2 is quite actually a recent game. Black played queen c7, castle, and d5, h3, well, just taking away the g4 square from black's bishop, a5. Maybe just a simple bishop f4 would give white an advantage. White played a4. Sometimes it weakens the b pawn in possible endgame. a4, bishop a6. Again, for me, the weakness of the c6 pawns and the c5 square should give white advantage, but Grandmaster Jan Smits with the black pieces, 2650 Dutch player, didn't think so and actually won the game. So I guess it's not as simple as my first feelings, but I would still prefer white here at any time. Maybe bishop d2 here immediately is possible, but after b3, Smits went immediately for the break with c5 and proved that black is okay. This was his game against Cherniev, London 2008. So quite a very recent game. It's actually towards the end of 08, and just proved that black is okay. So it's clearly not a main line, actually a very sideline a6 here, but maybe it's not as easy to play against the weaknesses of the c6 pawn. The main move is probably, well, other than take on e5, are either bishop d7 or d5 right away. Let's start with bishop d7. White has many possibilities here, but probably the one that makes most sense is going to be knight to c3. But also take on d6 was played, and just simple castle. Well, we can start looking at them. Actually, my mistake. Castle not in this position, of course, because of knight takes e5. After d5, castle is one of the main moves. Okay, so basically it leaves black with two moves. Either take on e5 or play e6 here after knight c3. But before that, let's see what happens if white take on d6. It is possible just to capture back, but without getting too much into it. It was played by Peter Leko in Buenos Aires 1994 against Spangenberg, was played by Bolog against Guadana in Reggio Emilia. Basically, white might try to use tiny bit space advantage and the weakness of the either d6 or d5 pawn if black pushes it for some advantage. The knight on b6 might be misplaced. So it is a possibility. Maybe white can enjoy slight advantage, but definitely one possibility. The move really for fighting is immediately e6. The idea is quite simple. Black wants to play against an isolated d4 pawns. No, nothing more than that. This idea was played by Grichuk, was played by extremely strong players, Timofeyev. So let's see how they played. Bishop g5, definitely something to consider. Queen b8 is a possibility, but which was played in some games. But the simple f6 just seems enough for a very simple game for black. Let's have a quick look at least Queen b8. I'll just show one game of Timofeyev. Knight c3, bishop takes d6, castle by white, castle by black. And here there are several moves, and Polgaevsky had a game like this in 1958. So this was played 1958, and 47 years after it by two strong players, Korniev against Timofeyev, knight d5, when black is just okay here, and actually went on and won this game. But there is absolutely nothing wrong with f6, bishop d2, and immediately capturing on d6. It is not easy for white to try and defend this pawn, of course. Knight to d5 attacking the bishop on f4, and if bishop goes, there is this problem. So after bishop to d2, bishop takes d6. Several games here were played, but let's just follow castle, castle, knight c3, knight b4. The d5 square is where black is queen e2, rook e8, and black is very, very okay here. Grichuk, 2006. The game ended in a draw, but it looks like black was the one fighting for the advantage here. Another classic example, Grichuk about 200 points higher than his opponent, 25 something versus 27 something, doesn't really want to go to drawish theoretical play and choosing a more complex play such as bishop d7. Okay, so if no bishop g5, simply castle by white. This is just very okay position for black. Knight c3, and very safely knight e7. Castle is also possible. There was one actually blitz game played on ICC by Nakamura against Botnik. Bishop after Nakamura played castle, and very much same idea. Black is better, but we're not gonna mention a blitz game more than 20-second stop. Morozevich played immediately knight e7, bishop d3, bishop c6. Black is very coordinated and the d5 square is under full control. And probably should be about okay position for white, but white played not that great and lost. It's a game between Ni Hu, 2700 player these days, Chinese player, against Morozevich, Beersheva, 2005. So we already have several of those guys, Grichuk, Morozevich, that try to play not pawn takes e5 after bishop b5, but try to keep more game and more excitement in it. So other than immediately take on c6, we can look at knight c3 as a possibility for white. knight c3. But here black should probably very simply just capture on e5. I will just show one game just because of the players. This is Gulko against Tal from Tallinn 1977. Tal played e6, Gulko played bishop g5, bishop e7, very interesting play. Knight goes to d6, but Tal wasn't, as we know, not so much scared of those things. And actually white should be better here, but very soon things went a bit messy for Gulko and Tal won this with the black pieces. So just wanted to show those players playing this line. But a simple way is probably just to take d5, knight b4, and the d5 pawn is just weak. This was Sveshnikov against Zaid, USSR 1976. For people that don't know, Zaidi was an extremely young, talented player that actually had a positive score against Kasparov when Kasparov was young. This is 1976, 77. Kasparov was at that time 13, 14. Zaid was about same age and I believe had a plus score against Kasparov, but he didn't become, was a strong player, but never became as strong as the guy he used to beat when they were young. So after take on e5, take back, and now g6 looks like the best move. Two very strong players, Tivyakov against Karyakin. The game followed a6, played by Karyakin. Bishop e2, bishop g4, and here Tivyakov, we already know, one of the top players in the world playing the Alapin, had superb play here. Bishop e3, take on d1, take on d1, knight d7, going after the e5 pawn, h3. Can you see white's idea? I mean, what is white going to play after bishop takes knight and take? Is bishop e4 and f4 trying to complicate things? Not really. Tivyakov had a brilliant idea. After take on f3, he played e6. What a move. Take on e2 is quite a funny mate. And after pawn take e6, bishop take f3, well, there's no question white is better, and I mean, forget about compensation. White is better here. How much? Well, can be discussed. Somewhere between slightly too much better for white, although Karyakin managed to draw this one with the black pieces. This was in Vikanzi 2006. 2 years after it, when he's 19, Karyakin won Vikanzi, the A group. This, I'm pretty sure, is the B group. But instead of a6, g6 is just a simple way to play. Simply bishop g7 and developing castle, bishop g7, queen e2. a6 now is possible, or maybe simply castle and then a6. This was Karmakulov against Vovki in Armenia 2007. Black is just okay here. Or the way that Luboyevich played a6. And here, maybe take on e6 is actually very interesting. And black has unbelievable pair of bishops. Luboyevich played f5. Maybe tiny bit worse after knight e5, but he played castle, complicated game, and he won. This was Tipsy against Luboyevich, Lucerne, 1982. Lucerne Olympiad, 1982. So, to summarize this line, or at least bishop d7, it looks like an extremely interesting play that keeps the balance, keeps the play going. D takes c5, many times it's going to be with many exchanges, and That's why we see so many strong players avoiding this when they want to win with black. Another possibility is playing immediately d5. Basically, it is very much the same idea as playing bishop d7, trying simply to play and not go into too forced or simple positions. For example, this was a choice played by Topalov against Tivyakov in their games, and White has several possibilities here, but basically they are not that much different from one another. Either castle, which makes lots of sense, h3 might be a possibility, for example, not allowing bishop g4, but simply bishop f5, knight c3, or castle e6, bishop g5, bishop e7, Nisipiano against Ilyanov, Dubai, 2004, black is very, or after h3, bishop f5, knight c3, immediately rook c8, castle e6, and black is very okay. Bryant against Nakamura, Las Vegas 2007. Again, the main topic is d takes e5 is simple and was considered very okay for black. The reason why I'm showing so many different alternatives is if black wants to play, he can have his way. He is not forced to go to very boorish, drawish positions. Knight h4 is another interesting move, taking both of those squares away, but simply bishop d7, and here after bishop e2, for example, e6, and white simply wasted too much time here, and black is just better. Cherniev, we mentioned him before, against Zagalko, Moscow, actually Russia, 2008. Let's follow with castle, bishop to g4. That's why we saw before the moves h3 or knight h4, just to try and not allow this way. And here, Tivyakov writes that in some place that he thinks h3 is maybe the best possibility for white, and hearing it from Tivyakov means a lot. First of all, let's see his game against Topalov. He played bishop e3, e6, knight b to d2, bishop e7, queen e2, rook c8, rook f to c1, castle, and black is just okay. Tivyakov Topalov, Vikan Z, 2006. Oh, that is actually exactly the Vikan Z that Karyakin played, so it was probably Group A. I thought Tivyakov many times played there, not in the first group, but this is Group A. So Tivyakov mentions h3 as maybe somewhat a possibility to try and get an advantage with white. Takes on f3, queen takes. e6, and here one idea by Tivyakov is, for example, if bishop e3, if bishop e7, queen g4, not so easy to castle because of bishop h6, and if g6, well, this is maybe already somewhat of a weakness. We're going to see in a second very similar type of that position. Instead of bishop e7, rook c8 also led to might lead to some advantage after knight d2. And if black is maybe just one more move, it should be okay, but white will really try to fight for the c-file. I think black still should be okay, but this is a possibility. Starwa against Minesian, Yerevan, 1996. I believe it was the Olympiad there. Another possibility is just knight c3, and here we can, for example, follow a game between Rausis and Anastasian. Very similar to what we saw before, queen to g4. Black chose to play king f8, h5. The king is not so horribly on f8 because g6 is going to be played really soon. But even here, going again for the c-file, Rausis against Anastasian, 1991. White is tiny bit better, although it was black that won the game. And another game very much in this way, queen goes to g3, take on c6, with possibly some advantage for white. So this line, h3 seems to be clearly a possibility, or maybe the possibility if white wants to fight for advantage after bishop g4. The game Tivyakov played against Topalov was very easily okay for black. To summarize everything that we've seen today, we've seen many different lines. Knight c3, just very simply capture on e5 and capture on c3. After queen takes, black can choose either king take or knight take. Both seems very simple for black. Also, moves such as knight b4 or bishop e6 are possible. After bishop c4, knight b6, bishop b5, take on e5 is part of the topic for next one. Bishop b3 is extremely interesting line we will explore. But if after bishop b5 black doesn't want to take, we saw a6, which I personally said I don't believe much in this move, but it was played by extremely strong players like Timan and Smiths, other strong players that did okay with black. Bishop d7 we saw was played by Morozevich, Gritschuk and other great players. If take on d6, the idea is to play e6 and very simply take on the pawn on d6, knight e7 and gain control here. And if knight c3, simply capture and g6. a6 was the beautiful idea in Tivyakov-Karyakin. And another idea played by Topalov, which is d5, castle, bishop g4, and here Tivyakov mentions h3 as maybe best possibility to consider. Without it, Topalov was absolutely okay. So very interesting alternatives, but it looks like, as in many of the lines with the aggressive Alapin, knight f6, black has so many resources. This is probably the main reason why it is the most played lines. We have lots of more work to do, and we'll do it in our next videos. Take care. Bye.